Live from the planet Lovetron, Thomas Game Podcast, episode 41. I am
DJ Realm Life.
in here with my wife, my
You know
companion.
my name. It's just
How you
Tiffany.
doing this evening, dear?
Good. I'm excited about tonight.
Good. This is a very, very special night tonight. Starting off Black History. And what a better way to start off Black History with this gentleman we're about to talk to. Let me just give you a breakdown. He's an American lawyer, entrepreneur, currently running for the mayor of New York in 2021. He was wrongly convicted in 1990 on 10 charges and sentenced to life in prison. He represented himself. He ensured all charges were overturned and even got a police officer to admit under the oath of evidence tampering. He also has a hit TV show on ABC called For Life. Ladies and gentlemen, we have Issac Wright Jr.
Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Thank you. Glad to be here. I appreciate it.
How you doing today, sir?
I'm great. As every day, I'm doing good. I'm living. I'm doing fine.
That's good. That's good to hear.
Yes.
That's good. So, like we had mentioned a few minutes ago, you're running for a mayor in New York. What made you want to run for mayor of the city?
It was a couple of things. The two most significant things was the state that New York City is in right now. It's in a state that it's never been in before, and throughout history, it's actually been able to withstand. For example, when COVID hit, maybe a month after COVID hit, I went into Times Square. And for those people that live in New York, those who visited, they understand what I'm about to say. Times Square was empty. I mean, it was completely empty. And maybe there were a couple of people on the street, and those were law enforcement officers. I've never seen in my entire life, I've never seen Times Square completely empty like that. And that scared me. And then, behind that, you have the loss of hundreds of thousands of jobs. I went to visit a friend several months later. He's a supervisor for a maintenance company, and I was talking to him on his job, and as I was talking to him, he was going from one floor to the other, on Madison Avenue, one of the commercial high rises, and each floor he went on, they were empty, completely empty. The businesses were gone. And so when I questioned him about it, he was like, yeah, they're continuing to leave. And he was pointing out other commercial buildings where entire floors, were emptied out because businesses were leaving. And so, when I kind of realized what was happening, I knew it was something different. It was something a lot more different, a lot more complex, the issues that New York City was going through, especially when you backdrop that against the fact that New York City can't borrow money. And a lot of people don't know this, that New York City was barred from being able to raise its own money when it gets into these financial difficulties. And so now you have a city like New York, who cannot raise money. The deficit is growing out of control. You can't raise taxes because there's no jobs. COVID has destroyed that. And the only way New York can get money is either to beg the federal or state government. And so this was an issue that I saw that needed a special person. It needed somebody. New York's next mayor is going to have to be someone that not only can think outside the box, but that can make the impossible possible. And
Right.
so, I had an incredible journey in my life, and I had a couple of awakenings. One of the awakenings was when I went to prison. I mean, before that happened, I was doing really well. I was doing well in my own career, and my ex-wife at the time, she was one of the biggest girls group out there. She was with the Cover Girls, and they were selling millions of records. And so we were doing really well, and I really thought I had it together. But when I went to prison, I realized that that's where I actually found myself. I did not understand, what I was actually made of, and the depth of my intellectual capacity, until I was in a situation that challenged me in a way that forced me to explore, who I really was. And so that awakening, that finding of myself, in prison brings me back to today, and what New York is going through. When you look at the two major tragedies that New York is bookmarked between. You have the Spanish flu that occurred in 1918. That hundreds of thousands of people lost their lives, but New York continued to flourish. You have the recent tragedy, 9/11. Thousands of people lost their lives, but when you drove up to Midtown, New York was still moving forward. It was bustling, but now it's on its knees, and I don't see how that's going to happen. How anyone's going to turn that around unless they're able to make the impossible possible. And so that was my second awakening. That the things that I was concerned about and the people that I was looking for, because I looked through the candidacy, I looked at their backgrounds, and I realized that the things that I was looking for in those candidates was already in me. You know, my background, the tragedies and the challenges that I faced, the ability to be able to get into something, fall into something, and trapped into something that I've never encountered before because I knew nothing about the law, and be able to take that complex situation, not only figure it out, but use it in my favor to triumph over those challenges, to be able to create something out of nothing and to make the impossible possible. The things that I was looking for was already in me. And so that was my second awakening. It was like this journey that I've taken all these years brought me to this place in time. And so I decided I was going to get into the race, roll my sleeves up, and be that person that's going to turn New York around.
Wow. And you were a victim of the Biden crime law of the 90s. Yes. Can you explain to everyone what that is?
Well, back when Bill Clinton was president, Clinton, and it was spearheaded really by Biden, embarked on an initiative to enhance criminal laws across the board with a heavy concentration on drug laws. And that enhancement meant not only mandatory minimums, but life sentences for crimes other than murder, violent crimes, drug crimes, and other types of crimes other than murder. And so there were also mandatory minimums attached to that where, people were mandated to spend very, very, very long lengths of time in prison before they even be eligible for parole. And what that meant was it gave law enforcement, the tools that it needed to just round people up. And one of the things about mass incarceration with these laws that President Biden spearheaded was that during the time that these laws were implemented, the culture was lock them up and throw away the key. But the people who suffered most was those in the Black and brown communities. And when you look back to those times, one of the things that was prominent during those times also was the war the so-called war that they had on organized crime. And so let me compare those two when it comes to the war, the war on drugs or the war against crime, and these enhanced penalties that Biden spearheaded. When you watch TV and you saw, because that's what we had back there was no social media, so when you looked at TV and you saw a mob figure being escorted out of his house, he was escorted alone. He was put in the back of a police car and he was taken to jail. When they went into Black and brown neighborhoods, they took the entire house. They took the mother, the father, the sister, the brother, the grandmother. They didn't care whether you were blind or in a wheelchair. And when they took the entire house, they charged everybody, people that were guilty and people that were innocent. And then they made the family turn on each other. They used the power of the government to turn families against each other. So it was a complete decimation, of the Black community through this crime bill. And so, I was caught up in that. The prosecutor that actually came after me was someone who created a criminal organization within his prosecutor's office. And that criminal organization was veered toward forfeiture. He targeted people with money and set a lot of them up, took their property, and then had friends go to the auction and auction on the property to get the property. And so before this even happened to me, he was involved in a lot of corruption that ultimately caught up with him. And that was because he had the power, of these crime bills that Biden spearheaded. And those same crime bills were the catalyst and were the backdrop for all the state crime bills. Because when the federal government passed these laws like this, the states follow right behind, and these laws, the state try to make their laws mimic the same as federal laws. And so, I got caught up into that sweep, and unfortunately, 99% of the people that did get caught up in it wasn't able to get out like I did.
Right. Right.
If you become mayor of New York, what are some of the changes that you would like to make?
Well, when I become mayor,
That's right.
That's right.
When you become mayor.
When you become mayor. I'm sorry.
no, it's okay. It's
gonna happen.
When I become mayor, there's three marquee issues that mean a lot to me, and that I'm going to tackle from day one. One is housing. The other is criminal justice reform, and obviously the economy. And so attacking the economy first, when I go out there and I shake hands and I meet people, there's a lot of talk in the communities and on social media and on TV about criminal justice reform. And, there's a lot of talk about homelessness, but the people on the ground are very concerned about their financial future. They're starving.
Yeah.
COVID has really decimated financially even the middle income families. So the lower income families, the marginalized families, they were already hurting, but now they're hurting times 10.
Right.
And the middle income families they're hungry too. And so one of the things that everyone is very concerned about is how they're going to live in the future. I mean, and this not only deals with their paying their mortgage, but also paying the rent. A lot of them have had their rents and mortgages in abeyance because of this COVID. But one day is going to come, when there's going to be a calling, somebody's going to have to start paying up. And so they're very concerned about this. And as far as the economy is concerned, I think the next mayor is going to really have to think outside the box.
Oh yeah.
In order to make that happen, in order to turn New York around. And so here's the things that we're not hearing from our candidates.
Right.
When it comes to the economy, New York is the richest city in the world. It is a financial capital of the world. Mm-hmm. And so when you look at that reality, the first thing that you got to think as a mayor and as a citizen, resident of New York is, why would the mayor of the richest city in the world have to beg? Why? Like, it doesn't even make any sense. Right. Why is Mayor de Blasio right now in Albany trying to get Albany to allow him to raise money? I mean, why is he begging? And so the reason that is because there's an inability to be able to see the things that's right in front of your face. When you are the mayor of the richest city in the world, what you're not realizing is that the ingredients to turn that city around is right there in that city. It has to be, if that's where all the money is.
Right.
And so when you look at that, here's what you see. You see a city that 113 billionaires call home. New York is the home of more billionaires than any city in the world. Mm-hmm. Those 113 billionaires has profited during COVID alone $1 trillion collectively. And so it's like, excuse me, Mayor, what the hell are you doing?
Right.
As the next mayor of New York City, this is what I see, and this is one of the things that I think is very significantly important to the economy. I'm going to sit down with these billionaires, and I don't need half of them. I don't even need a third of them, because one of these billionaires can write a check and get New York out of its deficit overnight. Okay. But we don't, like I said before, there's no need to beg. New York is a powerful city. So, hey, you guys, let's partner together. Let's get in a partnership, the city and you all, and let's create two significant programs. Let's create a young entrepreneur program, and let's create a free enterprise program. In the young entrepreneur program, let's give these guys, these kids 18 years old coming out of high school that doesn't want to go to college but got great ideas for businesses, let's give them grants. Okay, let's give them grants to start their own businesses. And all these high rises where these floors are empty, don't worry about it. The city will rent them, and that's where we'll put these young entrepreneurs. We'll put them in those buildings. All right. When you go to the free enterprise programs, now you're talking about the most ingenious ideas. You're talking about people who could be the next Amazon or the next Google or the next Microsoft. Yep. Let's actually partner with them. We don't give them grants. We actually dump our money in them, become partners, because, hey, billionaires, now you're going to get a return. how much more richer are you going to be if you're responsible with your money of creating the next Google? You're going to get a return on your money as a businessman, and the city is going to be right there with you, helping you along with this process. And so here's what that means. That means hundreds of millions of dollars dumped into the economy of New York City, and we've looked nowhere else but home. And this is what you're not hearing from these run-of-the-mill mayors, from these guys who are out there shaking hands and telling lies. And the reason why you're not hearing it from them is because they don't think like that. If they did, a lot of them are career politicians. If they did, the lives of their constituents would have changed already, but they don't. And so from an economic standpoint, the ingredients is in New York City. And when New York City gets on its feet on its own, you'll have people open up the doors. Albany will open up its doors to New York to allow New York to be able to raise money again. You're not going to have to beg the president, and you're not going to have to beg the governor. They'll ask you what you want, because you have your own strength. You're coming to the table with strength and with power, and there's not this exertion, of authority over you as mayor, because you're the mayor of the richest city in the world. But hey, I'm president, and hey, I'm governor. You got to listen to me. I don't care whether I mean, that's the attitude in politics. And so there's always this give and take, this power struggle between people of prominence in politics. And I think the next mayor, understanding that and knowing how to get New York back on its feet, is not going to have to deal with that to the level that they're dealing with it now. So that's one thing when it comes to economics.
Right.
The other thing, it's related to economics, is housing. Right. And this is a very significant thing also in New York. That's the reason why it's a marquee issue for me. New York City Housing Authority, they call it NYCHA, the acronym is NYCHA, houses over 500,000 people. The reason why that's significant, because if you look at New York City Housing Authority, if you look at NYCHA, as a population entity, it will be bigger than the city of Atlanta. It will be bigger by population than the city of Miami, Florida. It will be bigger than Oakland, California. NYCHA is literally a city within a city. So think about that. Think about you driving into Miami, right? Or West Palm Beach or Fort Lauderdale, and no one in those cities own their own home. Think about something. Think about it. Because when you look at NYCHA, that's what you're looking at. You're looking at an entire city where no one owns their own home. And this is not something that just happened. It was designed that way. Generation after generation after generation after generation, you have generational renters who are born with nothing, and they die with nothing, nothing to leave behind. And so as the next mayor of New York City, I'm changing that. NYCHA is now going to be evolved from a serial landlord to a conduit, a path to home ownership, so that even those people who are in those low income houses, they can own their apartments. They can take pride in where they live. The things that we see in some of these projects, you walk into the staircase and what do you smell? You smell urine. Why do you smell that? They don't care. Their environment is corroded with hopelessness. But what happens now if these people own their own home? They can now leverage it to send their kids to college. They can leave something when they're gone. Home ownership is a foundation of wealth. It's the foundation of worth. And so it is ridiculous. Decade after decade after decade, almost 100 years, that New York has been perpetuating generational renters. And that's something that I'm going to stop by turning NYCHA into a conduit for home ownership for all New Yorkers, including those in those NYCHA housing complexes. And so that's that's the housing issue. The other issue, obviously, is something that's dear to my heart because of my experiences, and that's criminal justice reform. One of the things that we have to understand about criminal justice reform is the responsibility that we have as citizens, the responsibility that communities have when it comes down to crime and punishment. Yes, we have government that has set up crime and punishment that's supposed to work even-handedly and with fairness. But we also know that has been corroded in a lot of ways, and that because of biases and prejudices and racism and all different other kinds of things, people of color, Black and brown people, have gotten the short end of the stick when it came to how we're treated by the criminal justice system.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I say the community plays a significant part in that, what I mean is this. You have community organizations, you have people that's actually been in prison and that have gotten out of prison and have put together these community organizations that is designed to attack these problems before they turn violent. Who knows about the issues in the community before they turn violent? The people in the community.
Right. They do.
9 times out of 10 before a crime occurs, especially a violent crime, we already know that there was long churning beef between these two people, or between these two fractures. We in the community know this already.
The streets already know.
We already know that. So if we can dump money, like we've dumped money in law enforcement, if we can divert some of that money that we've dumped in law enforcement to these communities to say, hey guys, listen, the police force is here to do 2 things. They're in here to enforce the law, and they're here to deter crime. They're not here. The police officer's job is not crime prevention. They usually come after it happens. Crime prevention is a community responsibility, not law enforcement. Right. And so when we began to look at who's responsible for what, the next mayor of New York, i.e. Issac Wright Jr., is going to do the things that most of these mayors have not done. They're going to put the responsibility predominantly for crime prevention, or I'm going to do that. Right. I'm going to put the responsibility for crime prevention on the communities, and I will fund programs for that purpose. The responsibility to deter crime and enforce the law is on law enforcement. And in doing that, in diverting some of that money from law enforcement directly to the communities, I bridge the gap between law enforcement and the communities themselves. You have to reverse that culture of silence, the culture of brutality, the culture of corruption, and you have to bring the communities and law enforcement together. One of the ways of doing that is diverting some of those funds, putting the responsibilities where they are, starting communication between these 2 groups of people, and slowly evolving NYPD into an icon of what it truly means to protect and serve. And as mayor of New York City, that's one of the things that I'm going to do when it comes down to criminal justice reform.
Yeah, I feel like that communication, what you just said, between the police system and the community, I feel like that is very important, because that's been lacking for a quite long time.
Yeah,
absolutely. And when the community knows that some of their money that they're getting for these programs is coming from the police, it actually encourages communication, because they know this is your money we're getting. So you're encouraged to communicate in ways that you were never encouraged to do so before. If as mayor, I'm dumping $10 million in Queensbridge, which is the biggest housing complex in the country. If I'm dumping $10 million in Queensbridge, in these nonprofit programs to ensure that crime prevention is taking place in those communities, they will communicate with the police, because that's law enforcement money that I'm diverting to them. So not only will they communicate, but they have to, and they have to communicate in ways that is productive, not in ways that is counterproductive, because that's a lot of money, and it's going to make a difference. The numbers will fall. When you start seeing the numbers fall, then that evolution process, that's the seed of that evolution process that is eventually going to turn into a harmonious relationship between law enforcement and the communities.
Oh yeah. So it's definitely going to take the right leadership to make that change. What I want to know is, how did you meet 50 Cent, and how did the show For Life come about?
Well, I met 50 through a friend of mine, a close friend of mine, named Andy Mascot. We call him Hove. And I met Hove through another friend named Darren Dean. Darren Dean is the owner of Rough Riders.
Okay.
Hove had been complaining to Darren about this illegal fight club that he started. It was huge. I mean, it was very, very successful. He had rappers like Fat Joe, Remy Ma come out during intermission and perform. And 50 was a friend of his. He wanted 50 to come out and perform, but 50 wouldn't do it. And the reason why 50 wouldn't do it is because at the time, 50 had his promoter's license, and he did not want to get caught on film at an illegal fight club,
right,
and wind up losing his license. So 50 said, listen, you get legal, man. I'm with there. I'm out there. I'm with you. You have 100% of my support. So this guy spent thousands and thousands of dollars on lawyers. 50 even shot him a couple of lawyers, and they all told him the same thing. It's impossible. We cannot make an illegal fight club legal. So when he complained to Darren about it, Darren said, listen, where all these other guys failed, I think I got somebody that's gonna help you out. So he introduced me to Hove. Hove told me his problems, and I got the fight club legal in 2 weeks, and 50 came out to perform. So when 50 came out to perform, he was like, yo, how the hell did you do this? And so he explained to 50, who helped him. He told him about me and about my story and how I helped him and how I made it happen in just such a short period of time. And so 50 was like, listen, you got to set up a meeting with me and this guy, man. And Hove set the meeting up, and the rest is history.
Wow. All right.
We see that you're making a stop next week, which is happen to be our hometown in South Florida.
Yeah.
I'm doing I'm gonna be doing fundraisers in South Florida, in Miami on the 18th, in West Palm Beach on the 19th. I'm sorry, in Fort Lauderdale on the 19th, and in West Palm Beach on the 20th. And the fundraiser is like a tour we started. It's something, it's something different, something unique in the world of politics, especially local politics. We're doing what's called a Lead by Example fundraising tour. And that Lead by Example fundraising tour is designed to go into the communities outside of New York City and say to these communities, listen, I know that you all have some of the same problems that New York City has. I know that you all have some of the same issues with your leaders and with your candidates that New York City has, that there are things that you need to happen in your communities that hasn't happened, that there are things that you've been shouting off the rooftops to happen. And every time you choose a candidate to lead you, you get the same thing. And so as the mayor of New York City, I think I have a responsibility, not only directly to New York City primarily, but to the country as a whole, to lead by example. Yeah. And so I decided that I was going to go to these different communities outside of New York and say, listen, here's a way that you can tell your candidates, that you can tell your leaders, this is a man that not only that we respect, but we believe that he's going to lead by example. We want you all to know that we're not satisfied with a lot of things. And so we're going to support this person. We're going to support this candidate for mayor of New York City to let you know that we want these same changes in our city. Right. And so that is the gist of our Lead by Example tour, to say to everyone and the communities, hopefully this will spark a movement within the individual communities and to wake their candidates up. Like, listen, wherever we're going to find that inspiration, wherever we're going to find that leadership to point to say, this is the way things are supposed to be done, we're going to follow that person and we're going to support him. And that's why I'm coming to South Florida. South Florida is going to be the blueprint for all the other cities that I'm going to be going to around the country.
Okay, great. Give everybody the dates that you're going to come to South Florida, everybody listening right now.
I'll be in South Florida a little early, but the dates that the fundraisers are going to occur is on the 18th in Miami, on the 19th in Fort Lauderdale, and on the 20th in West Palm Beach.
Okay, great. All right, sir, we're not going to hold you much longer, but before you go, we just want to say that this has been an honor for us talking to you. We're glad that you decided to do the Lead by Example tour, not only in New York, but also in South Florida and other areas as well, right. Because people need to hear your story, not just, on a hit TV show, which is a great show, by the way. We watch that show every week. But you are, not just saying this because of Black history, you are a role model for not just, young African-American men, but also one who's been in a similar story, such as yourself, who've been wrongly accused, who've been, police brutality or anything of that nature, just being wrongly done by the law.
Right.
So people seeing you out there like this, like it's a huge, it's great. Like it's great. Your inspiration.
Thank you.
For everything that you went through to come out where you are now to be, because you're going to be the mayor. We already talked about that already. You're going to be the mayor of New York. So again, we are honored and we are, I'm lost words, but
I understand, and I really appreciate it. I know the importance of what I've achieved and what I'm doing. I know the importance, especially to the Black and brown community, and just the challenges that we face as a community and as a people, I understand that value, and that is the core reason behind leading by example, because we need, we have our Black brothers and sisters are very, very intelligent, and I am the one of the guys, one of the Black men that we all can point to, and there's a lot of us, but I am one of them that we can point to and say, okay, listen, but what about this guy? You say this about us, and you try to point the picture, point a bad picture and say, this about us. But what do you say about that guy right there? What do you say about Issac Wright Jr.? What do you say about R.I.P. Kobe Bryant? What do you say about Barack Obama? There's a lot of very, very intelligent Black men that's doing things. The difference with me is that I came out of the pits of hell. And this is something that as a community, we've been trying to survive since slavery. So I know the uniqueness. I've mentioned a couple of very, very successful and prominent and iconic Black men, but at the end of the day, they don't have my background, and so I know the importance of that uniqueness of where I came from and what that means to the community. And I'm hoping that inspiration is something that flows from the prison yards, to the doors of Congress for a lot more of our young Black men and women that are aspiring to do great things.
Right. Definitely history in the making.
Definitely.
Indeed.
So again, episode 41. You can check this out on YouTube, Spotify, other listening platforms as well. Issac Wright Jr., aka
Make the right choice.
AKA
New Yorkers.
That's right, New Yorkers. Everybody come out, support him on the Lead by Example tour.
Yes.
This is the future mayor of New York.
New York City.
All right, so it was a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Pleasure's mine. Y'all take care.
Take care.